Senator Kelly recently introduced a two-bill package, the Educators for America Act and the Building Community in America Act, to expand pathways for Americans to serve as teachers, mentors, and volunteers. The bills bolster paid teaching opportunities and national service programs to boost recruitment with a focus on increasing the number of men participating. The legislation addresses teacher shortages, declining community engagement, and increasing concerns about loneliness and disconnection among young people. All right, Senator Mark Kelly, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fantastic, my friend. Big fan of yours. Obviously, being from Arizona, we get a chance to see you here and there doing your thing, and it's a joy to have you on the show today. So let's talk about what you're up to. So honestly, legislation is often crafted with the purpose of addressing a problem in society, and we talked about it just a bit. But for our listeners, can you explain, perhaps in more detail, the problem that these specific pieces of legislation are set to address?
Well, Ramsey, right before I do that, let me just say thank you for having me on.
Sure.
Been wanting to come on your show for a while, and I'm kind of still, I feel like I'm new to this. When you introduced me and said politician, I shiver a little bit. I'm like,
Sure. Yeah.
Because it used to say, if you Google my name, it would say astronaut or naval aviator.
Right.
And now it says politician.
Right.
So I don't feel like a politician, but I am trying to solve, some of these problems because that's the job.
Right.
And one of the problems we're trying to address is the lack of male mentors and teachers in society right now. When I was in elementary school, I had a male teacher in the 5th and 6th grade, and a really good science teacher in the 7th grade that the guy really looked up to. He was kind of tough and mean, but I think for the young boys, they saw him as like a strong male role model. The numbers have gone down dramatically. It was decades ago, it was about 35% of teachers were men. Today, that number is 23%. In some places, it's even lower than that. And it's the same for mentors. Programs like AmeriCorps and the Boys and Girls Club do not have enough men mentoring men. The list is really long for young men and boys that are looking for mentors. So we're trying to solve those two problems. So in one case, what we're doing is paid training for teachers who are men. And in the other, it prioritizes, searching for, male mentors to get them into programs like AmeriCorps, as an example.
Sure. So talk to us a bit about what the effect of this would be. Help us envision a society in terms of the health of the society where there are more men participating in these roles in the lives of young people.
Well, let me give you an example I heard from Scott Galloway, who speaks about this issue a lot in public on his podcast. One example is if the male figure in a young man's life disappears, leaves the scene, that person is more likely to become incarcerated than they are to graduate from college. As a very simple way to understand, what it means to, and I'm not saying college is this magic measure of success, but just in comparison, that the loss of the male figure, a role model, teacher, parent, has a dramatic and negative effect on young men. And it's at a time when, young men are really struggling, spend much more time on their phone. They often don't think they have opportunity. They don't have opportunities for relationships like they used to.
Sure.
Because of social media. Social media has changed that landscape. They often aren't competitive with women. And I want women to be successful, right?
Of course, yeah.
I've got 2 daughters. I'm about to have my 2nd granddaughter. It's incredibly important to me.
Congratulations.
But young people now are really struggling.
Do you look at perhaps systemic issues around here? We have conversations about um, the black family. This is something that, is often held up to black people to say, hey, if you were to fix, the structure in the home, then, it would shape outcomes. And what we've seen in the data is that actually black men are very involved in home life, and even black men that don't live in the home with their children outperform other men of other races. However, there are some systemic issues that have been at play, at least in the black community specifically, that have seen black men taken out of the home. These could be the carceral system. This could be obviously the rates of violence in impoverished communities, et cetera. In addition to, some of the more modern things that you've discussed, social media, and just kind of an evolving of the culture. Do you see any systemic issues that have been at play here that have kind of caused this dynamic to shift in terms of the numbers of male role models and teachers that are present in young people's lives?
Well, I think it is systemic. I mean, it's across the nation and across the board. It's just been like a slow bleed of loss of male role models and male teachers. We've seen it over decades, and it took a while to see what the impact was. And the impact isn't great. Young men need to have men in their lives. And I think and I'm even trying to do a better job at this, is, try to, in the limited time that I have, to be able to, be a mentor, to somebody who needs that is a thing I think we can all do. I think all successful, young or successful men should be looking for opportunities to help young men. But this didn't happen overnight.
Right.
It's not going to be fixed overnight. There's some things we can do to address it. My goal is to get this legislation passed, so this will have a positive impact on people's lives.
Here's hoping. I want to take a moment. The president of the Black Information Network is quite instrumental in helping the Boys and Girls Club of America, and he's a big supporter of many of their initiatives. And I'm hearing a lot of what you're saying today is a lot of what I've heard him say in terms of like the necessity of men in the lives of young males. I want to flip this on its head, though, because obviously we have a diverse audience here, and as near as makes no difference, half of them are going to be women. So talk to us a bit about what women's roles might be in this moment, or maybe how women can support perhaps the men or the young people, given this new information and the disparities in the access, I should say, that young people have toward male mentors.
Well, when you think about the school environment, young men are often interacting with a lot more women who are teachers.
Okay, sure.
And guidance counselors. In some situations, social workers are often, women. And, I think it's important for those, women to identify, the young men who could really use some mentorship and some guidance.
Okay, I'd go with that, yeah.
Facilitate that. And the Boys and Girls Clubs, as you mentioned, are really a critical piece of this. I just had, a couple weeks ago, I had a bunch of Boys and Girls Clubs kids in here. I mean, they were like middle school age, maybe 9th grade, 10th grade, possibly. But boy, they spoke so well about what those clubs meant in their lives, how important it was, and how just such a positive thing that they got to participate in. We need more of that. I tell you, I don't know what the percentage of kids across the country have an opportunity to go to a Boys and Girls Club, but I imagine it's very, very low.
Yeah.
So investing in those programs are important to the success of this country. And that's what I think we're all getting at here is we want young people to be able to grow up and be successful and contribute in society, have a job, a career, be productive, be able to have a family, have an economic situation where they can raise a family.
Sure. Yeah.
I got to say, without, getting too political about it, but, this administration has really worked against hardworking people across the country by prioritizing the needs of billionaires and multimillionaires with tax policy that helps them buy their next private jet where they can depreciate it over a year, gives them a big, tax cut so they can, put another zero at the end of their bank balance. That doesn't strengthen this nation in any way. It actually does the opposite. Yeah. But this all starts with young people. I think the best money we spend as a nation, after spending 25 years in the United States Navy, I worked at NASA for 15 years. The best money we spend in this country is spending it on education. Sure. I mean, that's my view. Okay. Because you get it back. You get it back with the future success of young people.
So let's stick with education for a second, because as you mentioned, we're under an administration that has, in our opinion, has been, if I put it mildly, problematic in the minds and the hearts of a lot of people, particularly historically disenfranchised.
I am with you.
So talk to us a bit about, I guess more generally speaking, how do you see the roles of teachers evolving now that the Department of Education has been moving toward, I know it takes an act of Congress in order to completely shut it down, but they're moving toward closure.
They're taking things out of the Department of Education. They're trying to dismantle it piece by piece. Exactly. And the Department of Education also supports a lot of programs for kids that have disabilities. Mm-hmm. Those programs could go away. Hey, I think there's a movement here where certain folks in leadership positions, politicians, don't believe that there should be a good public education available for every kid anymore. And that is horrible. Yeah. The strength of our nation comes from the strength of a good public education. I went to public schools.
Yeah, same.
And in Arizona, by the way, this whole voucher scheme that they got going on, most of those people that get those vouchers
are wealthy people.
Are very wealthy, and we're sending their kids to private school anyway.
Exactly.
Now they get it subsidized, and where does that money come from? Well, it comes out of the general fund, but it basically comes out of public schools.
Exactly.
There's less resources to fund the public schools. So again, they're taking money away from people that don't have a lot, that are going to send their kids to public schools, and they're going to use those resources to educate wealthier kids in private schools where their parents were already paying for the private school.
Sure.
That's not fair. And now there's a federal government program to try to fund more money into these voucher programs that could cost all of us tens of billions of dollars every single year. A federal program where you can donate, you can put some of your tax dollars. You get a 1-for-1 tax credit if you're willing to contribute some of your tax money, but it's fully refundable. So you get it back, which continues to undermine our public education system. And, who benefits most from the public education system? It's the middle class kids or the working class people. They don't have the opportunity to go to some fancy private school.
Right.
So my hope here is we win in Arizona, that Democrats win back the House and the Senate. And with this governor, you're going to see a big change in that voucher program.
Okay. Okay. So let's talk about that. What is the likelihood of these specific pieces of legislation passing, and what can everyday? So it's a two-part. What can everyday people do to support this legislation?
Well, I'll get to that. The second part first here. To support it, make phone calls, write letters.
Okay.
To other members of Congress, to senators, obviously not my office because it's my legislation.
Yeah.
The likelihood of it passing, hey, I'm motivated to get this passed because this is important and it will change people's lives. This is the United States Senate we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
If NASA had the rules of the Senate, the rocket ship would never leave the launch pad. So, I try to live in the reality of the situation we're in. It is hard to get legislation passed.
Mm-hmm.
I've been very successful at it. It takes time, energy, a lot of hard work, not only by me, but my staff and other senators that will get on board. You do not, draft a piece of legislation, send it over to the floor and get a vote on it. It does not work like that. It takes time. You got to build support from outside of Washington, D.C. I've got to get organizations like, the teachers union is a good example behind it, and other organizations to support it, to start talking about it, and then eventually there'll be a path to getting a vote, and then you got to get it passed in the House of Representatives, and then if there's any differences, you got to resolve them. Eventually, it goes to the president for signature.
Yeah. So, well, we kind of had an idea, but didn't know if any of these conversations had started. But obviously, this feels like something that everybody can get on board with. And, I appreciate you letting folks know, some steps that they can take to help this legislation along its way, because that, just bolsters, the momentum behind it, and so we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Another thing that I wanted to just touch on briefly, because a lot of people are concerned, in this moment, and you sitting where you sit and able to see, again, a United States senator, so not just from Arizona, but I think that this problem is quite pronounced in Arizona. You might be able to offer some insight, and these are certainly conversations we've had on this show. Talk to us about the pros and the cons of the data centers. I know that in Arizona, there's been conversations about the economics involved, of course, but obviously when it comes to like water and energy costs and things like that, in a place like Arizona, it's considerable. So, just talk us through what people should know, what people should be concerned about, what people should look forward to, that sort of thing, in your estimation.
Well, Ramsey, this is timing because I also have legislation next week I'm introducing to try to deal with this data center, and I think it's fair to say a problem.
Okay.
Across the country.
Yeah.
Challenges that communities are facing when these big tech companies come in and they want to build all this infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And in this case, we're talking about these data centers. I was on the phone with Mayor Gallego about this just yesterday, talking about one that's already been built that's basically in downtown Phoenix. That wasn't the primary purpose of the conversation, but it was that specific data center. But I was talking about my legislation here, which is intended to make the community and the people that live in the community, the focus here and get a say in how these projects are going to move forward. There are some incentives for the community if this is something they collectively decide they want to do. And there's also a smooth path for the developer to kind of leave and figure out, okay, I need to go somewhere else.
Okay.
Because this is not something that the people that live in this place want.
Sure.
People that live in these communities shouldn't have this imposed on them without getting a say in it.
Fair. That's
they
more
do
than fair.
A lot of rules. There's the electricity use to run the computers, the GPUs, can be substantial. Water usage as well, depending on how you're going to do the cooling of these data centers, is substantial. The size itself, the noise, There are all kinds of issues. Data centers should be put in places that, either the community is okay with it, because in some cases, there are places where they do want the construction jobs and the jobs in maintaining these centers.
Right.
But there are a lot of places that they are not welcome, and it shouldn't be imposed on them. So we need to figure out better ways to do this. My legislation is, I think, a good step in the right direction to try to fix a lot of these issues.
Got it. Well, before we let you go, another thing that I think is on the minds and in the hearts of a lot of people is, obviously midterms coming up. And there have been many things that have taken place over the past couple of years that would limit or weaken the power of people's votes. These people often, they don't look like you. These people are often women. They are brown and black people. They are, on and on. You get the gist of it. And yet and still, these people are looking at this administration and viewing midterms as their next or their last real chance at pushing back against what, by design is a push toward maintaining conservative power in perpetuity. To those people, what do you say as they head into midterms? What should they do? What should they know? What should they be prepared for? And how will they remain encouraged?
Well, I think you're talking about the people, because you said keeping conservative people in power, and there is a movement by this administration to do that. That's the SAVE Act. They want to make it harder for people to vote.
Correct.
And in our state, in Arizona, we've got a lot of people that live in rural areas, so it would become much more difficult to vote. They're trying to take away your power, and this administration, more so than any other administration, wants to wield that power against the American people. They weaponize the Department of Justice. This president is gone to Fulton County, Georgia, and collected the ballots from the 2020 election because
Right.
He can't accept lost. And he's trying to rig the system so it becomes more likely that the people that support him get elected in the midterms in the House and the Senate.
Right.
And if we don't stand up to this and don't fight back against it, makes it easier for them to win. And you say, our next opportunity, yes, the next opportunity is here in November. Could it also be the last opportunity to take back some of our power and get some of the levers of government to hold this administration in check? I think that's actually a possibility. I am really worried about the 2026 election here and 2028 as well, when the White House, the presidency, is also on the ballot. So what should people do? They got to get involved. They got to get involved in issues they care about, candidates that they want to support. I'll tell you what, volunteering for a candidate and knocking on doors, making calls is really important. In close races, that is the difference between winning and losing. Mm-hmm. And Ramsey, this is not rocket science. It just isn't. Yeah. It's just like which side is more motivated to win at any given moment. But when the system is about to be rigged against a certain group of people, you got to be. You can't sit on the sidelines, and you can't wait. We're facing a situation where this president might send federal agents, ICE or Border Patrol, to man polling stations to try to intimidate people from showing up and participating in our democracy. He's trying to take away vote by mail. And in Arizona, 80% of voters vote by mail.
Right.
I vote by mail. My wife Gabby votes by mail. Do you vote by mail? Democrats and Republicans both vote by mail. He's trying to take that away because he realizes that if you remove that, it gets really hard for certain people to vote.
Yeah. I think that your point is well made. And I think that we've seen, certainly with a lot of there's a newer, more progressive facet of the Democratic Party that has emerged in recent years. I think it was kind of inspired by Bernie Sanders, but we've seen folks like Zoran Mamdani bring it into the mainstream, and the excitement and enthusiasm is one considerable element when examining these democratic socialists. But I think that their willingness to organize and their willingness to knock doors, as you mentioned, and get behind their candidate shows how these people can be competitive and win. I believe that there have been a number of, there was a Democratic sweep in Chandler, Arizona, I read about recently. I know that there have been Democratic socialist victories in Tempe. And there have been other, people that were really surprising, at least in the state of Arizona, but obviously nationally as well, because we've, paid attention to these. I'm just, these are folks you might be a little bit more familiar with in Arizona. However, your point again is well made, because again, folks needing to get behind candidates that they believe in, knock doors, have conversations, challenging conversations. This is something that I believe in, and to hear that, you're encouraging our listeners to do the same. I think that gives us our best chance at really, as you mentioned, pulling back some of the levers of government, getting some control over what many people consider to be, call it a sinking ship, just to use a metaphor. So I do appreciate that. And I appreciate this legislation. I appreciate the work that you've done. It's a joy to see you out with your wife. We were able, Q, my co-host, and I were able to see you a number of times. We actually met before. You might not remember because there was a long line of us. But, when Kamala was running, and, we'd see you from time to time at some of the rallies. The most I can say is you seem to be a decent man. You seem to be a family person. You certainly do love your wife. These are all things that, we've been able to bear witness to ourselves. And I think the work that you're doing is just great. Keep fighting the good fight. It's people like you that help us believe that, change is possible, because you're in rooms we can't get into, and we do our best to share your stories on this platform at least. And so just know that it all counts for something. And always feel like you're welcome to come back on the show. Again, it's just a joy to have you.
Yeah, I'll come back anytime.
I appreciate you. Once again, Senator Mark Kelly, an American politician, a retired astronaut and naval officer, the senior United States Senator from Arizona, and our new friend. And we've just spent the past segment talking about his two-bill package, the Educators for America Act and the Building Community in America Act. Before we let you go, let everyone know your social media, websites, anything that they might need to plug in with you, and keep tabs on what you got going on.
Well, the website's markkelly.com, and social media, I think it's often like Captain Mark Kelly, or
that sounds right.
Senator Mark Kelly. You find it somewhere there.
All right.
I've got a couple accounts here and there.
Okay. Yeah, this I know. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time once again.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.